Hey everyone, it's John Blasco with PhoneArena.com, and today I'm doing a video comparison between four of the latest tablets out there in the market. They're all readily available and they have different sizes and they all have their strengths and weaknesses here. I've got the Apple iPad 2, the Motorola XOOM, the T-Mobile G-Slate, and finally the BlackBerry PlayBook. So I'm just going to pit them up against one another, see how they stack up in various categories. So the first thing I want to talk about is just quickly the design, and as you can tell just from a general overview, they all have this same old slate look. It's pretty much a giant slab. You have a bezel outlining the display, so nothing really drastic that stands out. But of all of them, the one that really captures our attention is the design of the iPad 2. Not just because it sports the thinnest profile, it's a very streamlined device, just but the overall quality and also premium feel that's attached to it. Of course, you have the brushed aluminum back cover, and it really makes it compelling just because it's a solid device all around. It's comfortable to hold, and it's definitely a standout out there, especially when you compare its thickness versus all the other tablets out there. When you compare it to the Motorola XOOM, it's just a lot thinner than anything else. The XOOM is nice, but again, it's just it gets a little bit dirty on the back with its metallic-like surface. The T-Mobile G-Slate, on the other hand, looks nice, generic in its form factor. We definitely like the soft touch coating in the back, but it doesn't really stand out as much as the Apple iPad 2. And lastly, the other one that really surprised us is just the BlackBerry PlayBook, because compared to the other two Android tablets, it's also streamlined, but it's just it's a hair thick, just a hair length thicker than the iPad 2. But the thing that we like about it, it is surprisingly solid, and on top of that, it has just a very minimalistic look with the soft touch coating in the back, and it's the most compact out of all of them. But again, all in all, the iPad 2 just delivers a well-rounded mix of quality premium feel that you expect with a tablet. Obviously, the screen size plays a crucial role in whether or not someone's going to buy a particular tablet. With the PlayBook, it has the smallest one at 7 inches. From there, it goes up to the 8.9-inch display of the T-Mobile G-Slate. But surprisingly, even though it sports a smaller display than the iPad 2 or even the Motorola XOOM, it's just as wide as those other two devices. And from here, you have the Apple iPad 2, which is at 9.7 inches, and it utilizes the same exact screen display as the original model. And finally, you have the Motorola XOOM, which provides the most ample room with its 10.1-inch display. So it's the largest out of the four here. And of course, of all of them, we have to say the best one that provides the most quality is just the PlayBook. In fact, it just produces some magnificent looking details, very crisp and clear. The second one closest to it is the Apple iPad 2. It's definitely nice. They both provide plenty of lush looking colors, very vivid. So it produces some very punchy looking colors. But the PlayBook's pixel density is a lot better. You don't notice the jagginess compared to the iPad 2's text on screen. You just have this fine, sharp-looking corners with the PlayBook. And honestly, in outdoor conditions, we just noticed that it's a little bit brighter than the iPad 2. So definitely the PlayBook wins in this category. With the T-Mobile G-Slate, though, it's a nice display, but there's a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. It's actually, we like this versus the Motorola XOOM, which unfortunately just lacks the overall luminance. It's still a decent display, but you definitely notice out of all the four, it has the lowest quality one. Although it's not something you necessarily need with a tablet, it still nonetheless gives you the option. You have the ability to take videos and photos with each camera here, and luckily all four have that. So let's start off with each one here. With the Apple iPad 2, it has a less than 1 megapixel count camera. It's actually the lowest resolution one. It lacks also a flash, but has the ability to shoot in 720p, and it's also not an autofocus. It's just a fixed one. With the PlayBook, it's also a fixed system, but it has a 5 megapixel camera sensor in there, which is able to shoot, surprisingly, 1080p high definition video. So you have really nice quality with its video recording. With the Motorola XOOM and also the T-Mobile G-Slate, you have 5 megapixel autofocus cameras. So for stuff like macro shots, you'll have the ability to get some really nice clear looking shots. But with the T-Mobile G-Slate, it has the ability to even shoot in full 1080p, whereas the Motorola XOOM is only 720p maximum, and you have dual cameras here, since seeing that it has the ability to also shoot in 3D, which is a novel feature, not something that it's a necessity, but it's just an added option there for you. All four devices have specific storage capacities depending on which one you buy. We know that the iPad 2 comes in 16, 32, and also 64 gigabyte variants. Same thing as the PlayBook, but with the T-Mobile G-Slate and the Motorola XOOM, you're only presented with 32 gigabytes of onboard storage from the onset. But it's only the Motorola XOOM that packs on a micro SD card slot, so it can increase its capacity. So let's now get into the platform experience. Let's talk about speed and responsiveness out of all the four tablets. We all know that they have their unique perks with their respective platforms. You have the Android Honeycomb experience with the XOOM and also T-Mobile G-Slate. You have a new experience with the PlayBook's QNX-based platform, and you have the usual Apple iOS experience with the iPad 2. Now, with the two Android devices, you just notice that even though they run pretty smooth in landscape thanks to their dual-core NVIDIA Tegra 2 processors, you still notice a little bit of slowdown and lag in various aspects, especially when you use them in portrait. It just doesn't seem to be as fluid compared to landscape use. But with the iPad 2 and even the BlackBerry PlayBook, you really don't get that. You don't have that issue. The thing that we like both of these is that the fact that they're very responsive to touch. You could see as we're swiping, even as we pause, it matches our movement here. So it's very nice and fluid overall, but between the two, we have to say that there's just a tighter responsiveness with the iPad 2's performance, and they all utilize dual-core processors. But if you want something that's utterly responsive to the touch and quick as far as kinetic scrolling or just navigating through the platform, you're going to see it most with the iPad 2. Both with the iPad 2 and the PlayBook, it delivers a straightforward experience, definitely easier to learn, and the learning curve is a lot lighter compared to the Android tablets. But the thing about them is that they lack personalization. Essentially, you'll be able to change the background wallpaper on both the iPad 2 and the PlayBook, and you can rearrange the icons to your liking, but to tell you the truth, that's pretty much it as far as personalization. You don't have the rich set that you find with the Motorola XOOM and even the T-Mobile G-Slate, and you could tell just by navigating around the platform here, there's a bunch of useful widgets that make it quite useful, from having stuff like a bookmark widget to something like a Twitter or even Foursquare widget on screen. You'll be able to use a bunch of different functions directly in the home screen. On top of that, you have your different wallpapers you could utilize, whether it be a static one or if you want to use a more dynamic looking one like the live wallpapers. It just provides a little bit more eye candy versus the PlayBook and even iPad 2. Again, size does come to play, whether or not the tablet specifically caters to messaging aspects more than the others. But for the most part, all four deliver an engaging experience. The nice thing we like about them all is that they're very responsive to the touch. So you're not going to have any slowdown or lag. You'll keep up with even the speediest of typers out there. In terms of layout, they're all relatively the same. The only thing that we wished out of all of them was that they had some dedicated number rows. But unfortunately, you have to go to their secondary functions in order to access it. Now, both the iPad 2 and also the Motorola XOOM have a large display, so for landscape use, it's not going to be cramped at all. Even with the T-Mobile G-Slate, the landscape keyboard is pretty nice, whereas on the PlayBook, it's definitely a little bit harder to use. You got to do just a single button press most of the time. But for portrait use, we definitely like both the PlayBook and the T-Mobile G-Slate, just because our thumbs are able to encompass the entire layout and it doesn't feel too wide compared to the XOOM and even the iPad 2. Now you could tell with the Android tablets, we like the blue color it exhibits when you press something, so you know you press a specific one. On the iPad 2, it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more difficult too to make out what you're pressing. But with the PlayBook, it definitely gives you the best distinguishability, just because it actually tells you what button you're pressing. But all in all, we have to say that the T-Mobile G-Slate, just because of its size and the keyboard, it definitely makes for the best use for messaging. On top of that, you have Google voice recognition, so instead of typing up stuff, you could always just speak it. Without a doubt, web browsing is going to be one key aspect that anyone who purchases tablets looks into. So they all have a really nice rate, but the most fluid one of all of them has to be the iPad 2, just because you could tell, even as you're doing kinetic scrolling, you don't have that jitteriness associated with it versus the other tablets. It's just smooth and just very fluid in its operation. But with the other three tablets, the G-Slate, the Zoom, and even the PlayBook, it has flash support, so you definitely get that full desktop-like experience. But we have to say that we're impressed most with the PlayBook, just because of the clarity of its display, the full flash support. It doesn't really stutter compared to the Zoom and even the T-Mobile G-Slate. When it does encounter some flash content, you just notice this general lag or slowdown with it. But with the PlayBook, it's just very smooth in its operation. At their core, all four tablets utilize the same generic-looking music player when you're playing a song, and it'll show you the album cover, track information, even on-screen controls. But it's with the Android tablets that have this really nice presentation with its look, just because it has the 3D-like effects of the carousel here. It just gives a little more eye candy versus the PlayBook and the iPad 2. But in terms of audio quality, all three except for the iPad 2 have stereo outputs. So you have left and right channels, where on the iPad 2 it's only a single speaker. But we have to say that the PlayBook emits the best tones. It's not irritating at all. It produces some strong, vibrant tones, and it doesn't strain at the loudest setting. Whereas on the Motorola Zoom, it comes close, but you definitely notice a little bit more crackliness to its output. Sure, it's not something that's highly prized with any tablet, but you still have nonetheless the ability to shoot photos with each tablet. So out of all of them, we have to hand it to the Motorola Zoom, which gives the best quality out of all of them. I'm just going to quickly zoom in here and compare all four. With the iPad 2 and the PlayBook, it's a little bit out of focus, definitely on the fuzzier side with macro shots, so just because it lacks autofocus. Where on the T-Mobile G-Slate and also the Motorola Zoom, when we looked at the photos on a computer, the Zoom has slightly better photos, just because the color production is a little bit more on the natural side. There's a slight dullness with the G-Slate's output, and they both still capture a lot of detail. Out of all of them, though, we have to say that the iPad 2 probably has the worst shots, just because there's a noticeable amount of graininess with its images, and also it's lacking on fine details. So now we'll show you the video recording quality with each tablet. Both the PlayBook and the G-Slate have the ability to shoot in full 1080p. You got 720p with the Zoom and also the iPad 2. So let's play all these here. Just show you real quick. Now, out of all of them, we have to say that the PlayBook delivers the best experience, the best quality as well, just because it's very fluid in its motion. You can tell it's a little bit jittery on the other three tablets. Even though the G-Slate has the ability to shoot in 1080p, there's just a noticeable amount of artifacting when you're panning, but it's very consistent with the G-Slate. With the iPad 2, though, it's kind of minimal with its clarity, and same thing goes with the Zoom. Even though it has 720p, it's kind of grainy at best. Since we've been using all four tablets for a little bit now, we're able to better tell you that the iPad 2 delivers the best battery life of all of them, just because on daily normal usage it just seems to last longer and the battery doesn't dissipate as fast as the other four. Still, they're all able to give you a solid day of usage, so you don't have to worry about recharging it at any time throughout the day. In the end, it's still pretty hard to say concretely which is the best out of all the tablets here, just because there's still a bunch of different factors that come into play, such as pricing. And if we look into that, both the Motorola Zoom and also the T-Mobile G-Slate sport no contract prices of over $750 and up, which is kind of hefty, and there's a premium price associated with their ownership. Conversely, you have the iPad 2 and the BlackBerry PlayBook. If you go with their base models, the 16GB Wi-Fi only versions, you're only paying $500, which is a little bit more reasonable, and you definitely get a sense of more bang for the buck with both of them. But again, it's just really hard to say. With the Motorola Zoom, you have a large display, and it produces the best looking photos out of the bunch. You have the iPad 2, which has a fantastic looking design, pretty well balanced, and it has an exceptional platform, a smooth platform experience. With the G-Slate, it's probably a little bit of it's a well-rounded device, just because the size is right there in the middle between all of them, and you have a nice display, takes some decent looking shots, and you have all the rich features of Android. And finally, you have the BlackBerry PlayBook, which is by far the most compact. It has the best looking display on there, and it takes the best looking videos as well. So if you'd like to learn more about any of these tablets, or for all latest cell phone reviews, news, specs, and information, you can check us out, PhoneArena.com.